Welcome to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past broadcasts are archived. You can pick them up at ArtistFirst.com. Send your questions and comments to DJ at ArtistFirst.com. Here they are, Michael and Margaret Lines.
Thank you very much, C-Man. A smooth intro as always. And I am Michael.
And I'm Margaret.
And she's Margaret. And welcome to the Soul of the Everyman, where every show is a gem. And this one, I don't know, is this going to be a gem or not? Because this is our very first show. Maybe not the very first, but it's one of the very first shows that we've had a listener request.
Yep.
So this topic is being accepted under duress. But I think it's actually a really good topic. And the topic tonight is claiming the moral upper hand in relationships. And the tagline is, should you? And have you ever noticed, now this is just sort of a let's say an observation, but have you ever noticed in a relationship when you're making a statement and your wife says to you, should you be saying that? You know what? Most of the time the answer is no. Or if there's a little voice in the back of your head, should I be saying that? Yeah, and most of the time it's no. You shouldn't be saying that.
I think it depends on how much wine you've taken in.
Oh, yeah, lots of wine. Well, anyway, but I did think this was an interesting topic because what it brought to my mind anyway was the kind of the idea of when a relationship turns into kind of a rather than a relationship where you kind of interact openly and freely, one where you're kind of keeping score, or you're kind of saying, well, who currently has the control? And maybe it's not quite exactly the control, but it's like, if I do something for you, then you have to do something for me. And if you don't do something for me, you're kind of going back and forth. Well, then you owe me, and I can, 17 and a half years later mention the time that I, went out on a limb to do X, Y, Z for you, and you never, and it turns into kind of a sort of a gathering or a collecting of it's not grievances, but it's like I gave something, I sacrificed something that I wanted to do for something that you wanted to do. And so therefore, I'm putting a little mark in my book, didn't go to the dressing thing today because of this. 17th, 1947. Okay. And that's like, graven in stone for our blood, or blood on stone, or stone blood, something. It's there forever. And you, if your relationship becomes littered with these sort of, let's say, stones of obligation, it can get weighed down.
Yeah, if you keep taking a stone and marking what the incident is, and you put it in your bag on your back, it just begins to grow and grow, and what is that bag ever opened, and let's get through this stuff?
Well, I think the bag is open, and those are the interesting occasions, because I think that part of what this turns into, besides sort of keeping very accurate track of when, what incident, what stone you've currently created, is that you feel that these aren't just a weight; they're also weapons.
Slings.
Also, slings and arrows. You can kind of reach back and grab the biggest, sharpest, bloodiest one, and woof, because you know, from 1947 when I did that thing, you know. So, you know, it certainly can be, you know, having this sort of tension build up in a relationship, because the tension is one or other party feels entitled because of the sort of the sacrifices that they've been writing down, and they also can feel wounded if the other party doesn't recognize these sacrifices or doesn't value them in the same way. You know, it's you're taking me for granted, or you know, I do all these things and no one even says thank you, or even you know, these things build up and they build up and they start to gather, you know, weight and momentum and resentments, but they also get stories written around them. You know,
That's true.
they aren't just rocks, but they grow moss. You know, they start to grow attachments of stories and more kinds of things that are kind of connected to this original, let's say, tiny rock that grows it into a bigger one. And then, you know, the problem is on the other side, once you start to kind of do this, is on the other side, there can be some, you know, a lot of less appreciation or a lot different appreciation of what I've been doing and how many things I don't get appreciated. And you start to build two arsenals as well as a wall in between out of these stones. You know, you both got the weapons and you both got the wall, and it starts to look a lot like Korea, you know, around the 43rd parallel or whatever. You know, you start to have a bit of a separation and a bit of a demilitarized zone, and the gulf or the wall gets to be harder and harder to get over. You know, it almost becomes yet another obligation that you had to climb over the wall to actually say, well, you know, you never did this for me. You know, even that's even more like even
More difficult.
more difficult.
Yeah. It's just the relationship, the definition of the relationship comes into question. Because the minute you start bringing in these judgments made in stone, it colors everything that you're looking at. You're not seeing what's actually happening in front of you. It's all been colored, or what was that? There was a movie where the truck driver had all these stickers on the window, and he can only drive by looking at this 2 by 3 inch patch, and that's how he got to see through the front. You know?
Yeah.
But that kind of understanding that, you know, you're clouding your experience right now.
Mm.
You know, do you really want to do that? Because usually, at least what I recall, especially in the older couples, you know, more traditional couples, where their roles were distinctly defined.
Mm.
You know, the woman was at home and raising the children, and the guy went out and brought in the money to sustain the family, and there are duties that each one is supposed to execute.
And they were culturally enforced.
Yes, and it was being culturally enforced. But the idea of being able to have a relationship where those mannerisms or habit forms, or just an expression, outside expression of the real connection, heart to heart, that happens.
Mm.
And I remember my nanny. She was, oh my goodness, very Italian, both she and her husband. And from an Asian family, you are not accustomed to yelling and screaming, okay? This is not how you communicate to one another. You are supposed to be quiet,
Right.
and you have maybe a discussion, but it's
Maybe.
only between the adults,
Right.
okay? Nanny and Pop, on the other hand, was like arias in operas. It was top of the lungs, just absolutely amazing. She never threw anything. He never threw anything. but I swear it was like listening to an opera where they are belting it all out at each other. And what I found fascinating was the fact that this is how they communicated.
Right.
You know, when they were belting it out at each other, they were really communicating what was in their heart.
Right. And in fact, the emphatic, to the extent that their words were full of emotion, was to the extent that it was so heartfelt. You know,
Right.
in other words, that was their way of bearing, you know, of not having a load of stones that you carry on your back and keep secret and only throw when you're really, really sure that this is going to be the right moment to really get it. No, they're like, I feel bad.
Yeah.
I feel bad. And then you say, why do you feel bad? And I'm like, because. And they go back and forth, you know.
Yeah. No, that was exactly it.
And you get it all out.
And everything is just hanging off the rafters. It's just,
Right.
I still remember we would, my sister and I would just sort of hide in the hallway and peek in to see if it's safe to go back in or not, because they were just, hands are flying everywhere, and Pop, since he was the man, he was sitting in the chair.
The chair.
And then he was running around the apartment with her hands going, and he would have his hands going from the chair.
From the chair, ex cathedra.
Right. So they would just back and forth, and then you would have like calm periods.
Right.
And then it seemed like it was worked out, and then maybe a couple days later comes up again, and they're going to be at it until they work it out.
But the interesting thing about it, those calm periods and the working it out, was it never turned into the sort of festering, you know, because what they were always able to do, and this is a feature of this type of relationship, is that you trust that even though you're feeling bad about something and the other person doesn't seem to understand, but they're going to listen to you. They're going to give you your space to get your stuff. You get everything out in the open.
Right.
You know, get it out in the open.
Right.
It's always
pretty much. Well, that was it. You know, like Nanny was that way. It's like, I can't keep this in. It's gonna make me sick.
It's gonna make me sick, and that's a great point, because one of the aspects of a relationship is that you trust the other person with your most intimate feelings, and when you don't trust and you start kind of packing them into these kind of, let's say, stones of offense or regret or whatever it is, you're also kind of taking back from the relationship some of the intimacy, you know.
Right.
You're saying, well, they don't understand me, but I know what I want. And I'll get mine back later.
No, this was, we're going to get our point across come hell or high water, because they weren't going to stop until it was done.
Right, but they they trusted each other enough to say none of the yelling, none of the screaming, none of that meant would come close to the core relationship,
right.
The true, you know. But that goes to, we put up this kind of boss graphic up on the website, which you guys should always check because the website has incredible stuff on it. And it basically it alludes to, and there was many things we went looking for these kind of graphs. Many have this sort of same sentiment. Is that, you know, in a relationship, if you're keeping score, you know, both of you are losing.
Mm-hmm.
Because, or if you're keeping score, it's not a relationship; it's a game. You know, you're not really in a relationship. You're playing a game. And this last one we kind of found is express your love freely without keeping score, because that's what your nanny and your pop were doing. Is they were expressing themselves at the top of their lungs,
right?
But they felt free,
yes.
To do it, and you know, neither one of them. And it's one of the kind of go back to the central theme. This idea of being able to claim the moral upper hand is really the idea that you can somehow be the person who is the more offended, and therefore,
oh dear,
the more deserving of deference when you ask for it finally. When it comes down to 2020 July 17th at 8:47 in the morning, oh, you're going to get yours. I've written it down right here. So
Oh dear.
it just it instead of and it is a burden, because in essence you have to carry your remembrance of the event, the past event. And remember what we always said, this is several shows, many shows, we said when you crystallize an event in the past and carry it, it is a burden. It's like regret. You are now living in the past and leaving a piece of yourself, that piece of that moment when you were offended or hurt, leaving it there, and you can't use it for anything else. That's why it's like a stone. It's dead. It's a dead piece which is holding on to an injury or an offense that you can't unravel and release.
Right. Right. And the only way you can release it is if you forgive.
Well, exactly. And we had a whole show about forgiveness, because in essence that's what you have to do.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter at that point whether or not you're right or wrong. It's just, I don't want to carry this burden.
Mm.
And that's what I would see with Nan and Pop. They would just, sometimes she was right, sometimes he was right. It didn't matter in the end. It's like, okay, are we good?
It didn't matter in the end.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing about if you don't do that, you can literally end up carrying around stones for the rest of your life for people and offenses who are long gone, who are dead, who are never, but you're still carrying it around with you. It's still is occupying a piece of your mind. It's still trammeling and bundling up some of your visceral life energy in this stone. And we've kind of struck into the topic of forgiveness, but in essence, the only person who's in bondage when you don't forgive is you. The person who gave the offense can be long dead, but if you don't forgive, you're the one in bondage.
Yeah, you wind up dragging that stone around.
You wind up dragging the stone. It's Scrooge and Marley.
Mm-hmm. Chains.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how many chains can actually come from a thought form.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Just ways of thinking, and then you're chained to this way of thinking. I always found that fascinating, especially when you're observing cultures.
Mm.
Just the way different cultures would almost, it's almost like being enchained in a certain way of looking at things and a certain way of reacting to things. This is acceptable, this is not. And there's no negotiations. No, that's not what we do. We do this.
Right.
And if you don't do this, then you're being disrespectful.
Yes, and those cultural chains and the cultural penalties that you pay can be severe.
There's plenty. Yeah, no, there's plenty. And unless you really had a very strong sense of your own identity,
exactly, they
would tear you apart. But the main thing is, and I reiterate this, Asian culture, Eastern culture, they do not raise children to be independent. You are supposed to be dependent on the family. You have no identity outside of the family. It's a really different way of approaching life.
Mm.
In American culture, it's like it's all about the individual and, go after your dreams and go and do, that doesn't make any sense. How is that going to help the family? You mean you're going to go off over there? No. We demand service from you.
But, and interestingly, if you bring that down to a microcosm of relationship again, there are relationships that are built that way too, in the sense that there's a sort of an unwritten, non-negotiable code that one person seems to be in charge of, and this can also be a way of claiming the moral, the moral high ground or the moral upper hand, is that you have elected yourself the judge of what is right, and as the judge of what is right, and right is in very large capital letters, you get to decide whether a behavior meets your standards.
Right.
And then to the extent it doesn't meet your standards, you get to be offended, and it becomes a sort of a different kind of stone, because it's you've broken the rules, and therefore you are incurring a debt to this to this.
Well, you're not human anymore.
Well, no, I mean it really comes down to is you have a sort of a you become less in breaking that rule. You've incurred a debt. The debt is that you were supposed to do X, you haven't done X, and the fact that it hasn't been done is now a mark against you. You've been marked as lacking, and you've got 5 black marks. That's a cross through the middle, and you're one level. So your worth and value and moral sort of rectitude, your how you're perceived is being judged by perhaps a not very open standard. Somebody has a book, in essence, where they're writing down, you were good today, you weren't so good the next day, and terrible. Okay, and so it's a ledger, and if you don't get to see the books, there's 2 things that can happen. One is you don't know where you are. Okay, so now it's insecurity. You're like, well, where am I on the book? Am I good? Am I bad? So once you've ceded this sort of moral high ground, or this sort of moral authority, is now the person who claims that gets to be, judge, jury, and executioner.
Yeah. Patriarchy or matriarchy. They're the ones that are in charge. They tell you that our family does this.
And sometimes it's a cultural enforcement. Again, but if it's sort of internal to a unit, to a relationship, or something which is cultural, it can also be this sort of unseen whip. It's like and remember we talked a little bit about family and about home and how homes have to blend together. If your cultural whip that you come from, your cultural background that you come from in the relationship says that if you don't get me flowers for Bastille Day, that's like 17 black marks, but you never knew about flowers for Bastille Day. But no, I'm sorry. Now for the rest of time, I will hold the fact that flowers for Bastille Day isn't in your book, isn't in your character. So therefore, this is a way of saying, well, it's my way is right, and all other ways are wrong, and you have to meet my standard. This kind of, and it can be to the extent that it's hidden, is almost to the extent that it has power, because it's like, well, I was expecting flowers for Bastille Day. I'll just forgive you, but I'm going to hold it against you for the rest of time. So you end up with tension.
Mm-hmm. Questions.
And
what's going on? Yeah.
And why are you feeling well? Oh, you should know it was Bastille Day last week, and well, what does that mean? What's that to me? Well, you see what I mean? And these, again, it's the keeping of score, or the kind of enforcing of not, I won't say imaginary rules, but they're rules which you haven't even bothered to make clear. They're like, I'm assuming that everybody knows this. I'm assuming that everyone knows I like my toast buttered on both sides. And when you don't do that, well, I'll forgive you, but I'm going to write it down, never buttered both sides of the toast. And and just, but those types of, we know people who treat like money that way, where you spend $3 on a pack of baseball cards and think nothing of it, but I write that down. That's just a waste of money, and I could have used that to buy something, and it becomes a bigger, 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 and at the end of how many years, it can turn into something where you've like, well, we've spent $17,000 on your silly stuff. Now I'm gonna go buy a Porsche.
Oh dear.
And if you say, well, why are you doing that? Well, you spent $17,000 on like that.
Yeah, they do say money is the biggest contention that breaks up the marriage.
I think that's one of the big ones. Yeah, and sometimes it can be cultural too, like you were saying before. Many family structures were built in prior times where one person was expected to earn the money, and sometimes that would turn into one person expected to also control the money. Not everything had to pass through the approval of the accounting department who was bringing in the money. So, well, and that can build up a tremendous.
There can be a lot of resentment with that.
Well, it's like the phrase "I earned the money." That means I get to say how it's spent. That's the claiming of moral authority that all of you or one person in the relationship is dependent on the other person in the relationship. Therefore, they're less than. It's not a relationship of equals. It's whoever's bringing in the money, and then that can do this. It can go back and forth.
Right.
And to the extent that it goes back and forth, that can create tremendous tension.
Yeah, depends on whether a person is tied up, his identity or her identity is tied up in the amount of money they make.
And so many people, because of our culture, the American Western culture value is how much something costs. People don't say, well, it was this beautiful house that had this and that. And they say, I saw this beautiful house that was $1 million. And they go, it must have been beautiful. Well, you don't know anything about it. All you know is a price tag.
Right.
And that's equated to beauty and how wonderful it is. So it's the dollar amount has become more than just a shorthand. It's become the way to say whether something is good or bad.
Right.
Good things are not cheap.
That's funny.
Even though that's maybe true, but in fact it can be true rather. But in fact, it becomes a truism, where that you always buy cheap stuff. You're a less you have what you buy is junk, and what I buy is good because I pay a lot of money for what I pay, and you pay junk. So it becomes a judgment call based on this kind of dollar on money amounts. Or my job brings in $17.50 a day, and you only bring in $3.50 a day. So I obviously am a superior person of great moral character and intelligence because I get paid more.
Oh, that's funny.
But this is this is another way of keeping score, or another way of
It's just so unhappy. I don't. What does that have to do with your relationship? Whether or not your hearts are talking to one another, you're clouding yourself with all this other detritus.
Well, I think
minutia.
You're not wrong. You're absolutely right. But I think that the effects of these sort of wrong, or let's say not wrong, but let's say these kind of stressors can be long-lasting. They can be they can cause relationships to both become toxic as well as to break up.
True.
And they're certainly not something that people explore. They kind of tend to live with them and hold resentment about them.
Yeah, I mean, if you're so unhappy, maybe it's time to just sort of stop and take stock of actually what's been happening.
You mean like go to a commercial break?
Okay.
Let's go to a commercial. Take stock, and we'll be right back.
There is a Reaper is the story of 5-year-old Christopher Aaron and his life-changing struggle with leukemia. Winner of both the Indie Bragg Medallion as well as the reader's favorite silver medal for memoir, There is a Reaper has more than 100 Amazon book reviews and a 5-star rating. It has been described as life-changing, spiritual, a must-read. Just released on Audible and iTunes, this memoir is also available in paperback and on Amazon Kindle for only 99 cents. Get your copy of this life-changing memoir today.
Taking God on Patrol is a first-person account of the world of law enforcement from the perspective of a Christian police officer in the 4th largest city in America. From speeding car chases to the crossing of the thin blue line, author Mark S. Cariner seeks to find God's biblical truth in a behind-the-scenes look at law enforcement. And check out Mark's newest book, The Tactical Heart. Both are available at Amazon.com.
Rick Riordan fans, love mythology with plenty of action and humor? Destroyer's Blood is for you. The new fantasy novel by award-winning author Michael Lynes is book 1 of the adventures of Dev Kalian, the Blood series. Follow Dev and his magic sword Betrayer as they are suddenly attacked and forced to return to Olympus to fight in a war they want no part in. The world of men and gods is about to be destroyed by Zeus's ancient foe, and only Dev and Trey can stop him. The conflict never stops, and the amazing twist will have you on the edge of your seat. Act now while the ebook is on sale for only 99 cents. Destroyer's Blood is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. And while you're there, get the free prequel, It's in the Blood, available for a limited time.
The Timeless Esoterica radio program with Dr. Bruce is broadcast on the 4th Monday of every month at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern on ArtistFirst.com. We explore topics including the paranormal, alien life, mysteries, conspiracies, hidden history, oddities, and much more. Each show will feature a special guest with exciting and thought-provoking discussion. Always keep an open mind, an open heart, live forever, and remember Dr. Bruce believes in you.
The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lynes, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere.
You are listening to The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Let's get back to them. Michael and Margaret Lynes.
Thank you very much, Steve. And we're back. And we were keeping score. Were you guys listening? Because we're really offended when you don't listen. It's okay though, because we'll mention it anyway. So tonight's show, the first half hour, we're talking a little bit about this is our first perhaps listener requested topic.
Fine.
And so far, I think it's going okay. But tonight we're talking a little bit about The actual topic was, whether or not you should try to claim the moral upper hand in a relationship, and we talked a little bit about that, but I think another way of looking at this is sort of the let's say the idealized relationship, or the relationship that we want to have, is a relationship of equals. And I think we've had a couple of different shows where we talked about relationships because they're so central to human beings in general. When people look for a relationship, they're looking for sometimes a reflection of themselves. But when you yourself are not whole or complete, or you've got so you're looking for a complement versus somebody who rather not, you're not looking for a compliment, you're looking for somebody to fill in a hole in yourself. You're not bringing a whole you to the relationship. And oftentimes the two folks who get together are neither one of them completely whole. In this case, people say, well, two halves make a whole. Well, no, in this case, two halves don't make a whole. What they end up making is sort of a fractional or a imbalanced relationship.
Right.
A true relationship is when you have two whole persons, very different people many times, who the two wholes make one whole relationship. And in that one whole relationship, you're not looking to you're not looking for the other person to fulfill some lack in you. What you're really looking for is that other person to complement your wholeness. Your wholeness and their wholeness unify into a whole, not your brokenness and their brokenness somehow exactly fit into a person, because that's not how relationships work. That kind of relationship ends up, because it never fits, it ends up having different kinds of maybe worse types of gaps and worse types of lacks, where even though you thought this person could fill in this hole in you, they don't. It doesn't quite fit, or their brokenness is something that you can't fill, and your brokenness is something they can't fill. So
if you can admit that there are parts of yourself that have to get worked on, and you realize exactly what it is, and you're not relying on an outside source to complete you, that's the illusion that somehow if I meet up with my soulmate, we will come together and we will form this perfect union. It's again, my half with his half, you put them together, we get a whole. It's like, no, you don't get it. Half a person married to another half a person does not make one whole person. If anything, it's a multiplicative process. It's not adding, but it's a multiplication of powers, your own internal power. So a half times a half is a quarter. You basically bring both of you down even more. The ideal is, of course, is to be able to say, I am whole. I'm autonomous. I function completely. I don't need this other person to complete me. You can say, yes, I want companionship. Yes, I want to be in a love relationship, because that's what your heart yearns for. But to put it in a way that suddenly nothing else matters except, finding the knight in shining armor or the perfect woman, it's like, okay, do you guys know who you are?
Well, exactly that, and knowing who you are and accepting who you are is really a primary step in being able to have a relationship which is balanced, because a whole one and another whole one is a balanced relationship. Then you put them together and you say, well, that's going to be two. Not if it's a real relationship. In a real relationship, what you do is you trade energy back and forth in a balanced way. And the thing is, it's also not well, I gave you 17.5 kilograms of energy today, and so you owe me 17.5 plus that 3.5 that you didn't give me back last week, plus the 2 that I'm going to give you next week. So you owe me 19. It's not that kind of trading back and forth. It's not accounting ledger trading, but it's being whole enough in yourself to know that if I give everything I have to the relationship, I'm going to get everything back and more.
Yeah.
So with good, solid relationships, you give without counting. You give without thinking, because the giving of all of you, have you heard that phrase? Okay, take all of me. Giving of all of you, everything, to your life, to your last breath, to this other, is no more than they deserve. And they're in a balanced relationship. They're giving of everything they are to you.
Mm-hmm.
It's no more than you deserve. But yet you don't sit there and say, well, I'm waiting to get everything first, because I don't want to go first. You go first, because in the balanced relationship, you both are dying to give your whole selves, everything that you are, to the other.
And it's all of you, all the lumps and bumps and bruises and ugliness, as well as beauty, all of it. You're in relationship because the soul of the other one is someone that you want to share your heart with.
Everything.
Oh, yeah. And it has nothing to do with well, maybe let me go back a little bit. If you are capable of loving yourself freely, not picking yourself apart, just understanding that, yeah, I got these lumps and bumps and crazy tendencies, but that's who I am, but you're able to accept that. You bring that to a relationship so that the other person is sitting there going, yeah, that's you. I receive that.
Exactly.
It doesn't become contention. It doesn't become an issue. It just is. And yeah, it doesn't mean that you don't work on any of that. Goodness knows, life is long. And you have to work through what you basically sit there and go, I need to be more patient. I need to work on that more. I need to be more generous, or I need to be just more open. And it's fascinating. It's really fascinating, because in a relationship where you agree that the most important thing is that the two of you are together, that's the commonality that I saw with the people that I interacted with that had long marriages. The most important thing was to be together. Yeah, other person will drive you bananas. Okay, it's just the nature of what it means to be human. But you realize that, what? The most important thing for me is to be with you. No other reason. Yeah, we don't agree on stuff. Oh, well.
Exactly. And that goes back to, again, let's say Nanny and Pop's relationship. The all of me that was her and the all of me that was him were loud and crazy and hands in the air and yelling back and forth. But that was the all of them, and that was their relationship. And they couldn't wait to put their whole heart and their whole bodies and minds into the other.
Right. And the interesting thing that just brought up a memory, the one thing Nanny and Pop always did is they never went to bed angry.
Exactly.
I think that's biblical. Don't let the sun set on your anger.
Right. You have to sometimes keep the sun above the horizon for days and days and days. But yes, no. In fact, it didn't. The aphorism is in essence to say that don't hold a resentment and hide a piece of yourself which is angry and hidden. You give all your anger and all your love and all of you to this other, because exactly as you said, the most important thing is that all of you is presented as your gift. All of you
Right.
is your gift to the relationship.
Right.
So you don't count anything in that, because guess what? You can't count anything if the first thing you give is everything. You're done. You're giving everything. You get I gave one, and I'm done. That's it. I got one. What do you got? You got one. We're good. All right, because we're giving everything. There isn't like, well, I did this, and the other thing. So you have 47.5% of me today, and tomorrow you'll have 47.7% of me.
I know of people who, with their giving, like Christmas presents out, they have to spend the exact same amount of money on every single child. And you're sitting there going, well, what if the kid doesn't want what you're trying to give him?
That's a great example, because that's substituting an external value for all of you. You know what? How much of you do you give to each one of your kids? Well, I give 37% of me to Johnny and 27. No, you give all of you to every one of them. Now, how can you do that? Because if you give all of you to one, then you've got none of you left to give the other one. Well, the amazing thing about it is you give all of you away to one of your children, and you still have all of you left to give to another one, because every new relationship that you have, you still have all of you to give to that relationship.
Right.
So the fact that you give all of you to somebody does not stop you from giving all of you to somebody else that you love just as much, because we are vast. We contain multitudes. If we start parsing ourselves up into 47.5%, then you're fractured. Then you really can't ever give all of you.
Then you limit your love.
Yes.
And a parent's love for a child is usually unconditional. It's
unconditional.
It's limitless. And you limitless in giving the love to each and every one of them. Your interaction, of course, is quite unique, but the love is phenomenal. It's always there. Yeah. So if you can embrace that and understand that the significant other that you are in relationship with, this is the kind of love you're talking about. It's a fullness of love that understands all the downsides. And, maybe you just need a pressure valve somewhere where, you're getting frustrated, so you have to figure a way to get that pressure off of you, and maybe you do need to let the other person know that, this is making me crazy. So find a way. I mean, Nanny and Pop were screaming at the top of their lungs. Well, you can find other ways to do this interaction. Your anger management places, go break something in one of those anger rooms.
But actually, in giving all of yourself, that encompasses that piece, the piece that's angry at you today, the piece that even that could be resenting you for last week, whatever. Because the all of you that you give to a relationship, as you said earlier, is your lumps, your bumps, your things that you need to work on, your faults, your failings, and all the good things about you too, which is very much smaller. And but you give all of you to every relationship. And what do you expect back from a real relationship is all of them. But you know what? Relationships also change. You give all of you to your parents, and your parents start to fail because they're older, or you start to fail because you're older. Your relationship changes physically. It changes in what you can do and what you can give, what you need. You can change your relationship so that you become completely physically dependent. You look as though you can do nothing in this relationship, but in a real solid relationship, you're still giving all of you. Because you say, whatever I have is yours. Even when you have to give every physical dependency to somebody, do everything you can. And as long as the all of you is never scored, you're not writing down that, man, if I didn't have this person in my life, I'd be free. No, this is all of you given to this relationship. So because we think of ourselves as being one person, I think it's a wrong way of thinking of ourselves. We are able to have all of us available to every person that we have a true relationship with. So our one person is multitudes of people, because for every different relationship, true ones, there's another us that we can give all of to that relationship. You can't have a relationship like that with every person you meet. That you have to pick them. They have to be special. It has to be reciprocal. It has to be correct. But when you find those people, and there's going to be a small number of them, maybe only one, but when you find the one, you give all of you to that one.
Right.
And there's going to be more than one, but find the one first, because that's important. We're here, and you've said this many times. We're here for relationship.
Mm-hmm.
We come from spirit. We come to this place to dream the common dream, but we're here to find relationship like that, where you can give all of you.
Well, the love. You're down here to learn how to love. And learning to love is a tricky process, because there's a lot of adult preconceived notions. Children, on the other hand, though, they just love. It's an open-hearted, I like you, I'm going to hug you kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm here, you're here. Oh, it's wonderful. It's just that much. My God, it's an eye-opener. Mm. When you're able to sit and look at another little face, and your eyes meet, and they brighten. Mm. It's like, hey, I know you. Right. You know me. It's like, yay.
It's one of the reasons why when people have relationship, when they see an infant, their whole demeanor changes, because they know that this is a soul-to-soul connection without words. It's eye to eye. There's nothing but And one of the reasons why people find wonderful relationships with their animals, because there isn't this. You haven't got all these other things in the way, blocking stones, blocking cultures, blocking languages, blocking. You got to do this, you got to do that. It's easier to have this instant. Give all yourself to an animal, or give all yourself to a child. But you have to find...
Animals do that. They just give, and that's it.
Right. But you have to find the person, the full adult person that you can do that with. That's where you're going to find your bliss, but find your relationship. And when you do that, and I think this can't be overemphasized, there's no more way to keep score. There's no more moral upper hand, because no one's judging here. You're just giving all of you because that's what you want to do.
Continually.
Continually
you give all of you.
Right.
And honestly, because of our experience with Christopher, all right, that is the only thing you can give, is your love, continually. Because the circumstances were such that we couldn't cure him of his cancer. But you were there every day. And you realized how precious this moment is. This person, you don't know when this might end. Mm. You really don't. So have you said everything you wanted to say?
Exactly. And I think knowing it there gave us the perspective to know that it's everywhere, for everyone that you have relationship with.
You learn at that point that every single child on that ward is in the same situation, and they're all yours.
Mm-hmm. And every person that you have relationship with is in the same situation, and as are you. You have, as we said many times, you have now. Past is immutable. The present is unknowable and not guaranteed. For the future, rather, is unknowable and not guaranteed. All you have is the present. You have an instant in time to give yourself fully to another, and you don't know if you're going to get another instant.
And the truth of the matter is, when you give fully like that, no holds barred. You take a step into a realm that I call the eternal moment. Because the love that you have etches that memory
Mm.
in the eternal moment. It is there forever.
Mm.
As a testimony to the love that you share.
Yeah.
It's not easy, because everything that you witness is not always easy, but you share the joys and you share the sorrow, because life is, and it's not something that you can control, but do you choose on a moment-to-moment basis to stand in the moment of now and say, I live.
I love.
I love.
I love.
And
I love you.
And sometimes you realize that you are going to get hurt. But you know what? You still love.
And you don't care.
No. Yeah, it hurts.
Yeah, it hurts. It's only pain.
It's only pain. And who was it that said, the amount of pain that you feel is commensurate with the amount of love that you have with the person that is gone.
Yes. But even when they're not gone, the giving of all to the one person, to the person that you're in relationship with, not that you're only in relationship with one person, the giving of all to the one person is a valid pursuit in and of itself. It doesn't need another moment. It doesn't need a past moment. It just needs the now moment. And
Right.
it is written on eternity. And once you've given your all, it doesn't matter what else is demanded of you, because you've
Right.
already given your all. So if you hold anything back, you can feel resentment. If you feel the other person's holding anything back, you can feel resentment. But once you've given your all, no more can be asked of you. Now, your all can change, because all is not a constant. It's just everything you have.
Or you are.
Or you are. But you have to understand, everything you have changes all the time. But as long as you're always giving your all, it doesn't matter. The relationship is balanced. And
Yeah, I remember, now, I'm trying to remember where the quote came from, but someone had said that a marriage, when you are in a marriage with another, all you do is try to buoy up the other person continually. You don't think of yourself. You just keep thinking of the other person. And that other person does the same for you. So there is no doubt in your mind that this person has your back. Always there.
Right.
And you cannot doubt in your heart that this person is somehow not going to be there. It's just, this is the standard of your relationship. I buoy you up. I bring you as high as I can possibly go. And you do the same for me.
right, I mean, you're both holding each other up with no net and no wires.
Right.
In the middle of the air.
Right.
As you fall through space.
I fly. I don't know about falling.
Well, you fly. But the point is nothing's holding you up except the other. And nothing's holding them up except you. As long as you're all holding each other up completely, fully.
But it's your hearts that are allowing you to fly. You have to understand that the power, that the love that brought the two of you together and has come together to grows wings. And that's when you really begin to fly.
Right. And while you're flying, don't keep score.
Okay.
But unfortunately, I think the scorecard is 1 hour 60, us nothing. So this has been The Soul of the Everyman.
Yes. And I'm Margaret.
And I'm Michael.
And thank you for listening.